Hello everyone and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Paton on your official SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. It is round 17, if you can believe it. The buys are behind us and welcoming back onto the couch for a huge post-buy edition. Patch, great to have you back.
Great to be here. Delighted to be back. Delighted the buys are finally gone. Thank goodness.
Well, the buys, you were killing it in the buys.
Well, the first two buys were terrible and miserable and awful, and the last two buys have been much better, but just they're bad. Just don't like them. There was a middle buy as well that was middling, I guess.
There were a lot of buys.
There were too many buys. Just get them out of here. Piss them off.
And Chloe, welcome back. And how do you feel about the buys?
I'm happy to see the end of the buys. I was actually quite excited for the buys because I thought I can execute my long-term plan. I thought I had appropriate cover, but then obviously plans don't always work out. So the buys ended up being a bit of an enemy for me. Dropped a fair bit of rank during the buys and I didn't have that 1 week to push me back up again. So that was a bit disappointing, but, good buy and good riddance.
Yep.
Exactly. So back to best 22 out of 23 players available. Get all your premos back on the field. I suppose it's a bit of a warning for, especially if people are mucking around with trades, you do the reverse trades. Just make sure that it doesn't reset to last week when you've got all your, Geelong and...
You've got Zach Merritt and Max Holmes on the bench suddenly.
Exactly, yeah, and Tom Gross on field or something like that. So keep an eye out for that. But reminder, like and subscribe, leave a review. We love everybody's feedback and still worth getting SuperCoach Plus, invaluable tool for the run home. Coming into SuperCoach finals, break-evens, projections. You can look up your own rogue trades, which we'll be getting to very shortly. But every SuperCoach knows that managing injuries is a key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Big one this week, Lachie Whitfield. It was always going to be touch and go whether he could come back after that concussion a couple of weeks ago to play on Friday night, and GWS have said no, he won't be doing that. They're not going to take any risks. Give him another week off. So that's a big one, obviously, for people who have Whitfield in their team. Kieran Briggs is a test on the GWS injury list. That's a close watch for Nick Madden owners. Jason Horne-Francis, bit of a debacle last week if you brought him in like I did, subbed out with a sore shoulder. Ken Hinkley said after the game it was really more of a management thing given short turnarounds. He's not on the Port injury list, so hopefully, fingers crossed, all good for JHF this week. And another one that did catch my eye, Campbell Gray on the Richmond injury list, down as 1 to 2 weeks away with that knee injury. So he might provide some welcome relief on the bench for people who've held him.
Yep, Al has stitched me up and given me all of the Essendon players for this week's injury report. Darcy Parish has done a calf again. Who knows when he'll be back or if he'll be back this season. Mason Redmond will miss a week with a hamstring strain that's apparently on the most minor end you could possibly get, but either way, it's probably good news for Zach Johnson or for Angus Clark. Kyle Langford is going to miss most of, if not all of the rest of the season with a quad, but Sam Durham is back from suspension. Zach Reid is back. All hail Zach Reid. And Jordan Ridley is also a test with his hamstring. So maybe there's some options down back for us.
I think I brought Jordan Ridley in about this time last year and he just got injured again. So maybe not recommending that one, but if you're feeling fancy. Harry Sheezel out of North Melbourne obviously grabbed that shoulder towards the end of the game. He was at training though, did have the no contact hat on, but he is not on the injury report. So that is good news for us. Adam Sard down at Carlton, 1 to 2 weeks with concussion, and Jack Silvani, 2 weeks with a groin injury. So that is not really relevant for SuperCoach, but more so, could Matt Carroll get a call up again? Fingers crossed. I'm not thinking so this time, but we'll keep our fingers crossed anyway.
As a Carlton watcher, do you think maybe Lachie Cowan ahead of him?
I do think so at the moment, yes, but we'll keep our fingers crossed and maybe it'll bring some good luck for SuperCoaches.
A couple of changes at the Blue, so maybe you never know. That is a wrap for this week's injury report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. Now, it is the Breaking Even show, and we like to look at some break-evens. Obviously, we're probably not going to be bringing in too many fallen primos for the rest of the season with trades running out, although Lachie Whitfield does have that high break-even of 144. He's down to 509k, so he'll probably go under 500,000. So once he does come back, plays a game or two, he'll be an interesting one. If people do have a couple of trades in the bank, would you consider potentially making that move? So that'll be one to keep an eye on. I mean, the other ones that really grabbed my attention were, some of the highest break-evens in the comp. Tristan Cherry, 181, Max Gorn, 171. So both of these guys were well over 700,000, 4 or 5 weeks ago. Cherry's down to 628, Gorn's down to 654. I mean, we know the Bont is down to 568k after he was 693 when he came back in after played a couple of games after his return from injury. So is this a lesson that we fail to learn every year, Patch, that we just shouldn't be paying top dollar for guys like this, that they always do get cheaper?
Yes, they do always get cheaper. It's a big matter of when, and sometimes you can't predict the when. The when is always going to be 2 to 3 weeks after you trade him in. It doesn't matter what time of the season it is, that's the time it'll happen. But yeah, I think that's, especially this year when we're so strapped for cash. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it all season that you got to go the value, and maybe trading Max Gawn out was the right move. Who could possibly say? Not me. I would never make such a claim. But yeah, these guys, if you don't have them, you've got a really good chance to try and pick them up now. Yeah,
I think it makes for some great buying and some great upgrading this week for anyone who does have the luxury of trades or the luxury of having some cash. Obviously, it's been so hard to generate that cash, which, I think has been an issue in targeting players at their cheapest price. I mean, I got a few at their cheapest price sometimes along the way, but it doesn't always work out that you're able to grab everyone. I know that we went early on Bont and that didn't necessarily work out too well for us, but it is hard to tell when they'll hit that sweet spot. You might think they will, and then they'll have a spike game. So it is a bit hard to read, and then add the buys into the mix as well and planning when to bring people in. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, but yeah, they're all great players to target this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got Gawn. I think I paid over $700K for him, but it was when maybe TDK was injured, and I thought, well, this is my chance to get Gawn in, and I probably don't really regret that because he's just such a set and forget piece of your team in the ruck. The Bont is probably a different story where I went early on him. I didn't have to do that. I could have waited, or I could have grabbed someone who was a bit cheaper. I mean, Isaac Heaney was someone I was looking at, probably 130 grand cheaper. He's outscored him from there, and that, where I'm at now with my team sort of struggling to, get 23 decent players and then, hardly anyone on the bench and no trades left, and it does all have these sort of flow-on effects. So something I'll try and remember next year, but it's always hard to go in the moment. The one other one that I thought was worth mentioning is I think he has finally bottomed out, and that is Sam Flanders. He has lost money every week since round 5.
Wow.
He's lost a grand total of $269,000 off his starting price, but he's got a break even of 42 this week, so I think he's about to turn the corner.
Sure. The longest, roundest corner in SuperCoach is finally getting turned, and good luck to him for next year. We'll look at him. I'm not going there, no matter how much Darcy loves him on the lair.
Yeah, I think he had a big, looking at some stats, he had a big spike in his CBAs last week. He went from 0 to 1.
100% increase.
Yeah.
Or infinity percent increase. Yeah. That's as big an increase as you can get.
So he's starting to play a little bit better, but the role is still not great.
No,
but
absolutely not.
It might be one we can look at last year. I think Darcy mentioned too on the lair that new DPP changes coming in after this weekend. There's not going to be a heap of names there, but you can go online in the SuperCoach news feed and on the masthead sites and check out the time on ground stats for every player, not just the ones who are in contention for DPP. And you can see someone like Flanders, if he keeps going the way he is, he'll be a forward only next year. So, that's interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And, like Harry Sheezel, I think might probably be a mid-forward next year based on those numbers. So, there's a lot of interesting names in there, even if maybe Sam Doherty's probably the only really exciting one this week.
Yeah. Well, look, Flanders at 400K as a Carlton player, sign me up. That's interesting.
I wasn't going to mention it, but I'd get on board with that.
It's only good news for Carlton this episode, Chloe. So if there's any mention of redacted, she's storming out. One break-even I've got my eye on, we mentioned it before, Jordan Ridley, 144 break-even.
How much is he?
He's 463K, so...
I've seen this movie before.
You have seen this movie before.
Twice.
The sequel will probably be no different, but maybe.
He does play Richmond in a couple of weeks, and he's put up some pretty
That's if he makes it to the
scores.
Richmond game in a couple of weeks.
They play Gold Coast this weekend, so you get a chance to have a look at him. But if you have Lachie Whitfield and no cash, maybe, but we'll talk about that a bit later on. Chloe, any other fallen primos you're looking at?
Well, I don't have his break-even in front of me, but talking about that swap from Whitfield, potentially Tom Stewart could be another good option to kind of sideways Whitfield if you're not keen on holding him long-term. And I think he's a few K cheaper maybe.
Yeah, he's 504, so he's about 10K cheaper.
So he's got a great run home, so yeah.
Yeah. Are we answering the Whitfield question now?
Well, yeah, we may as well just ask that.
May as well just jump straight into it.
Would you consider trading Whitfield if you're an owner? And we assume he'll be back the week after, although he has had some injuries over his career, some, sort of lingering effects that, assume they will play it, be cautious with him. But, yeah, I expect he will just miss the one more.
Look, if you've got cover, hold, I think, especially in, with flex back, it's still best 22 out of 23. It's not all 23 on field. Everyone should have Tom McCarthy. He's defence eligible, should hopefully be in your defence. That's the easiest plug-and-play swap in history. If you are desperate for someone else, and I guess maybe you'd trade, if you got more than 4 trades, I'd consider it.
Yeah.
If you're desperate, but I'd also think that 1 weekers are the reason we have the Tom McCarthys, the reason why, if you've only got to play with 22, then I'd probably just do that for a week.
Now, Chloe, you're in the position that Max was referring to there where you're a Whitfield owner and you have Tom McCarthy, but I saw you smashing that optimise button, trying to get McCarthy back into the defence, and it wasn't happening for you. So
yes, I tried my best. I thought, why is my optimise button broken? But unfortunately, I did not have enough loops to be able to get Tom McCarthy to cover Lachie Whitfield in my backline, which I thought I did. So I'm not quite sure how I ended up in this position. I am potentially considering going down to 2 trades just to be able to facilitate that. But otherwise, yeah, I'll either run with a rookie in my flex from another part of the ground, or maybe I could just hedge my bets on 22 out of 23 playing. But yeah, it is a bit of a conundrum. I don't think I would consider trading Whitfield out just because I don't have more than 4 trades. Like, I think that is a good number, that if you've got more than 4, maybe you could consider that. But yeah, I'm not in that position. So
yeah,
unfortunately makes it trickier.
I think you're holding Whitfield in most situations.
Yeah.
There might be a few curveballs if you desperately need to win a cash league game or whatever it is. But I'm interested as well. Harry Sheezel, apparently supposed to play, hasn't been very good.
Yeah.
And I can do a fun little trade, which is my question to the pod. It is a bit rogue because it's trading in Rory Laird.
Oh, I like that.
Or Harry Sheezel.
I've been looking at him this year, yeah.
If Harry Sheezel's are laid out, which I suspect, no contact hat does fill me with a little bit of terror despite calls in the group chat to normalise the no contact hat. And I also really like Laird this year. He's gone under 89 once for the whole season.
Yeah, he's had a good year.
He's had a very good season off half back. Had gone in his last 5 games, 117, 96, 111, 118, 118.
So, he's not putting up the sort of 150s that he
he's just been
once, but
incredibly consistent. A player I really like the look of this season. And if you're trading in your backline this week, he'd almost be towards the top of my list, pending, who else you've got. Tom Stewart's also a very, very good pick. And probably the more bargain option that you'd rather go for, but at 540k, I think Laird's a really interesting and fun little buy-in in 2% of teams or whatever he is.
Yeah, Patch, that is a little bit of a rogue trade. So it's seamless segue into our rogue trade segments where we pick out some unusual, perhaps eye-catching, eyebrow-raising trades that people are making on the SuperCoach site during the week. I noticed that 19 people are trading out Zach Reid this week, so they've held him that entire time he was out, and now finally cutting the cord. And also 62 are trading out Jaden Short. So they've held him since round 8.
Why not 4 years ago?
Hoping that he'd come back, and finally lost patience. I don't know when he is going to play again, but so it probably is the right move to trade him, but probably wouldn't have waited this long. And another one that I thought was a little bit unusual was 8 people trading Ed Richards to Tom McCarthy. Now, I think McCarthy is a must-have this week. Find a way to get him, but that's probably not the way I'd be doing it.
No, there'd be 30 other players I'd be considering trading out ahead of Ed Richards if he was in my team. Chloe, what have you got?
My rogue trades, the rogue trades that I've chosen, they all involve Brodie Grundy. So one person is trading Grundy out
All right.
for Joe Pike from Geelong.
For who?
Joe Pike, 99.1k.
What's a Joe Pike?
I'm not sure. But apparently better than Brodie Grundy. So
right,
would make
it's a huge money-making move.
$600,000 on the trade because Grundy's over 700k, but
not sure if
it's very rogue.
You'd need a lot of trades.
I would love for a cut of me last year saying don't trade Brodie Grundy out in round 12 or whatever. Just repeat that. I'm
sure that's on tape somewhere.
It must be somewhere.
And then there is also 25 people trading Gawn out to bring in Brodie Grundy.
Again, why now? Why not 4 weeks ago? But
That would have been a great
like one of
trade
the most
4
insane
weeks ago, yeah.
hot runs in Supercoach. I think
Yeah.
he's 6 scores in a row over 150 or so. But he's 700K now.
it's too much money. And also you don't know if it'll keep up. You just can't guarantee that it'll, it's so hard to maintain that for that long.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone's ever maintained that level for more than this.
No, I mean, we were talking about Max Gawn in that same area a few weeks
Yeah.
ago, and now look at him. A schmuck. He's washed up. He's over the hill.
I will just quickly go rogue from Rogue Traders for 1 second, if that's okay with everybody. I would just like to formally apologise for anyone who was considering Grundy a few weeks back, and I think that I recall that I said you may as well just get Tom de Koning for a slightly cheaper price. So I do apologise.
They've basically been the same. There's been no real difference.
A couple
between
hundred
them.
points
Yeah,
difference. It's not really a
fine.
big deal.
It's fine.
So I apologise.
My rogue trade is that in the top 1%, there is one coach that's trading out Matt Kennedy for reasons that I can't quite explain.
Can't get around that.
He's got a 3-round average of 99. Like, I know there's some more bodies back in the midfield, but also he's fine. But, if he's your biggest problem, then I guess that's why you're in the 1% and I'm in the 2%. So,
Yeah,
well,
interesting.
there
We
you
were
go.
talking about off air earlier about the forward line and how, halfway through the season it looked like it was just overloaded with primos, and now there's probably 2 or 3 that we love, and the rest are just sort of going okay. And Matt Kennedy's probably near the top of that pile, so that does seem a slightly unusual move. But we better get into the questions because I put a tweet out. Thanks to everyone who responded. Just asking, has anybody got trades left? I didn't think I'd get too many replies, but actually got quite a few, and some of them go right into the weeds, some complicated trade options.
some really niche, specific questions here,
Yeah.
which
So we'll see how we go. We'll try and answer, help as many people out as we can, and try and maybe provide some general Supercoach advice as well. And, they throw up some interesting topics.
Yeah, I think, just off the top, answers will depend on how many trades you've got as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
That'll be a big factor in what we
And it's hard to know
recommend
exactly
doing.
without seeing people's teams. What do your bench look
Yes.
like? What
Yeah.
loops have you got, mid-forward connections, all these sorts of
Yeah.
things. But we'll do our best. So jumping straight into it, great question from SuperCoach HQ. Put this poll out on Twitter and then asked us specifically as well. If you could pick one pod for your team for the rest of the season out of these guys, and he's put up Errol Goulden, Hugh McCluggage, Ed Richards or Touk Miller. You can have one, just ignoring how many trades or whatever you've got left. Who would you take, Chloe?
You had to go to me first, didn't you? I've been thinking about this all morning, and Goulden would be a great pod just because there's not a lot of people who can get to him at this point in time. But for me, I would go Hugh McCluggage. This is if I'm saying that I've got endless trades and no price restrictions.
Cash, yeah.
He's just been the most consistent all year. Not very likely to cop a tag. Richards has obviously been amazing, but he's started to cop a bit more attention recently. And Touk Miller's been amazing this year too, so it is obviously a very tough question, but I think I would just have to go Hugh McCluggage. I think he was one of our first pod of the rounds this year, so he just is keeping on as a pod, and potentially he would be the one that I would choose.
Who do you like, Patch?
I like all of them.
Yeah,
They're
me too.
all really nice and wonderful. I was very close to trading in Touk Miller last week. I thought about Lachie Neale to Touk Miller and then went, you have 4 trades, stop, what are you doing? And I think that was the right call. So I really like Touk. He's just been the most consistent player in Supercoach this season. Not really a competition. I think he's dropped below 100 once, and that was a 99. So he's been fantastic. I think of those, I'd probably rather Ed Richards. He's had, dropped 66 last week. I know somebody got fed up with him and is now trading him to Tom McCarthy, but the run before that is phenomenal. Like, he's been incredible since about all season. He's just the guy I'd be bringing in if I had the clean slate and anyone to pick from, but hopefully you're not going to go too wrong with any of those 4.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think they'd all be great. They'll all be good to have in your team. But
And Supercoach HQ did put up the poll on Twitter, and
who's winning?
with
Errol?
110 votes, it is Errol.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I in the end, finding it hard to split them, I did see that Errol and the Swans have West Coast in round 24,
Yes.
the Supercoach
Yeah.
Grand Final. So it's a
If
sort
you're
of
playing
game you could imagine Errol.
If you're playing leagues, I think that changes the question as well.
Yeah.
He would be very fun.
Yes, although might also not be as fun because his role can swing more outside, more inside if they decide to throw Callum Mills as an inside mid, then maybe that.
Yeah, there's a few more moving pieces there.
Yeah, I think he worries me more than the others, but he could also be the highest averaging of all of them. It's really difficult to then figure out.
That's the thing for Took as well. Like his role has moved around a little bit this year and he's still been able to stay so consistent. So.
Yep. All right. Well, like all those guys, Fari says, I have one precious golden coated trade left. If I had two, I would trade Brayshaw to Goulden. Hopefully, I don't think he's going to do that, but he said he's worried about Brayshaw looking like he's struggling with a niggle. Not sure what's going on there. I mean, his scores definitely aren't at the level they were for the first, 12 or 13 rounds where he was just about the top midfielder in Supercoach, but has been a little bit frustrating the last few weeks, but I certainly haven't considered trading him.
No.
So I think we can move on quickly from that. We're not doing that, especially with one trade. Daniel asks, he said he's ranked 107. He's got 4 trades left. Would you use 2 to go, say, Cerra to Bont, or hold off and he doesn't want to miss out, doesn't want to miss the boat on someone like Bont, but doesn't want to run out of trades. So 4 is sort of right in a delicate area. I've got 4 at the moment, and I'm sitting on that. But I do have the Bont. I mean, as much as he's dropped 2 60s in the last 3 weeks, which is very unusual for him, and probably if you're ranked just outside the top 100, I think most coaches ahead of you probably have Bont, so it would be a pretty scary situation going without him. Would you go down to 2 trades to get him in?
I think when you're within spitting distance of $50,000, you just send it. And honestly, if you finish, 107th or you finish 1,007th, like you're still, I think at that stage you'd rather have a crack if you're at the really pointy end, and that's what I'd be doing. And in that case, you'd probably look at bringing in, maybe you wouldn't bring in Bont. Maybe you would bring in an Errol Goulden or like a really big pod that lets you leapfrog everyone else. Because if you're bringing in Bont, then you're bringing in, a player that everyone else has, and you're not making ground on anyone. You're just kind of equalising it and in a holding pattern. So I would, with 2 trades left, I'd send it, risk it, and then there's the chance that you fall away and you trade in Goulden. He goes to a wing, he's rubbish. That you'd take the shot, I think, in that situation.
I don't think you're going to, if you went Cerra to Goulden, you're not going to lose on that trade. I don't think. Worst case scenario is I could have probably just kept Cerra and they're not that much apart. So yeah, I don't mind that. Chloe, question for you from Moore. Who to loop with McCarthy this week? Assuming, maybe this is a bit harsh to throw it your way when you've got McCarthy stuck in the midfield, but he obviously has him in defence and he can loop him with either Colby McKercher or Callum Mills. So, this, especially with Whitfield out too, I think this does show the advantage of people who've been able to pick McCarthy, even though it's kind of a little bit annoying in a way that he might be on the bench for some people. I've got him in flex, which has been great, getting those scores, but it means I have no cover. Whereas if you lose a Whitfield and you can bring McCarthy on easy, that's the best situation to be in. But if you've got enough players that you can loop him as well, would you do it with, who do you like better out of McKercher or Mills this week if you had to pick one to sort of roll the dice on?
Well, I do like McKercher better for this week personally, but also just because he plays first, I guess once you see his score, then you can kind of decide what to do from there.
So you put the emergency on McKercher?
Yeah, I would say so.
Because it's a bit of a weird week where you've got the 2 Friday night games and the Eagles play Friday night. So that probably does make things just a little bit simpler. But then Mills did drop a 50 last week.
Yeah.
What do you think about Mills?
I'm still in the boat where I didn't really trust his role enough to trade him in, and I'm still a bit concerned. But he's also got the runs on the board that the other 2 don't. So I think you back him in on field. Freo would tend to give up a bunch of points to defenders as well. Like Nazai Wangan and Miller had a field day last weekend against them. So I think you'd trust Mills. And then, as you said, Thursday night into Friday night, it's a simple emergency loophole.
Yep, I'm certainly in favour of not overcomplicating things with loops if you can avoid it. Thomas asking, he's got 6 trades left, and it sounds like he can do this in one move after building the bank, going Shea Bolton to Max Holmes. We happy with that? I mean, I think, yes. 6 trades, so if that only takes you down to 5, that's still fine at this stage. Shea, in the last 5 games, I think he's got 1 ton, and that was an even 100. The others are all under 80. He seems like he's sort of lost a lot of his centre bounces that he had sort of during the middle part of the year. And Max Holmes' run, Geelong in general, But, we know how well Max has been going. They've got Richmond this week. They get Richmond again in round 24. And there's a lot of games at the category in between as well. So I love that.
No brainer.
Joshua asking, trading Roberts out to Tom Stewart or Sheldrick to Joel Frazier. Chloe, you've already talked about Tom Stewart. We like him?
Yep, I would lock in Roberts to Stewart. Lock it in. I think that Angus Sheldrick can still continue to play a role for now in your team until you can find someone that you're really sold on bringing in. Joel Frazier had an amazing game this week, but I'm not thinking that he would be able to produce that as consistently as Tom Stewart at the moment.
Yeah, I like Stewart, and I think
and Roberts, to move Roberts.
Yeah,
I think
Roberts we have to probably get rid of if you've still got him. If you've got enough trades.
Yep.
And I think he scored in the 60s last week, as we talked about with all these players coming into the Sydney team, Goulden and Mills and all these guys. He's sort of in a bit of no man's land back there, and I don't think we can be expecting the 90 pluses that we were getting for a lot of the year. So yeah, I'd be moving him on. And Frazier was incredible last week, but
amazing.
Has been up and down. Had a few scores in the 70s as well. So
yep.
I think Stewart's much more reliable. Supercoach Dog saying he's got 5 trades and thinking of doing Roberts to McKercher, which I think a tick for that. And then he's hoping in a couple of weeks he'll have enough cash in the bank to trade a rookie up to Whitfield when he bottoms out. So that all sounds good to me.
Perfect.
I'm jealous, honestly.
Yeah, same.
Go for it.
Sam also has Shea Bolton, and he's got Sheldrick in his flex. He's got 7 trades left, saying, how do I upgrade both? And I did spend a bit of time thinking about this, and I don't really know the answer. If you've got some cash, some kind of cashed up rookie on the bench that you could trade down to a 99K guy, that might help you with one of them. Doing both is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the situation I was in a few weeks back. I had a lot of people hanging around awkward prices. I think that's when I still had Dante Visentini, Elijah Hewitt, Kay McAuliffe when he got injured. So it can be very difficult to do those upgrades, especially, 7 trades is a good amount. But it's just hard to find someone
you're going to have to build
in the
some
right
cash somehow.
Yeah,
it depends
someone
on
in the right price range could be hard to come by.
Yeah, it depends who's on the bench and what cover you've got, what cover you're willing to go down to. If you like Archer May this week, maybe is the type of player you'd then trade in, but how you get to him, I think there's every chance that you might just be stuck with Shea as your flex for, the next kind of month or the next little while until somebody else bottoms out. Yep. And that's probably fine. Like Shea Bolton's, been dropping 70s and 80s, but if that's hopefully your bottom score, that hopefully drops out.
Yeah.
If somebody gets injured and is, a Tom Green out on 5, then, 70 or 80 is fine to cover.
And he's the sort of guy that could pull out a 150 probably the week you trade him out.
Yeah, like he's still, like their run home isn't great, but there's still a few games where he could spike. I've got Shea Bolton. I'm not super mad about it. I just, if Jason Horne-Francis becomes the same price as him, that's a very easy straight swap. But until then, I'm happy to I'd rather keep him there than burn 2 trades on him at this stage of the year. Even with 7, I'd look at getting Sheldrick up to whoever the best player you can is. And then once you've done that, then see how much cash you got left over. If you can do a fun trade in 1 trade, then go for it. But if not, then I think there are worse players to be holding at flex for the rest of the season.
Fair.
Especially if you can loop him with Tom McCarthy. Both are mid-eligible. That's what I'm planning on doing for the next little while, is just looping McCarthy with Bolton whenever I can.
Yep. Don't mind that. D's fan 95. Is it worth jumping on Darcy this week before he goes over 500K? So he was absolute talk of the town last week when he was a bit cheaper. He's gone up a little bit, but still, definitely affordable. Has North Melbourne this week. Obviously, at quarter time he had about 70 points or something and then barely scored after that. But I think he's definitely still worth getting if you can get him in, if you have the trades.
Yep.
Agree.
Hawksy, who's been a regular all season. So thanks for another question. Can you go down to 1 trade if you have cover on every line? Feels like Flex does change things compared to previous years where you do only need the 22 scorers. But I still feel, 1 is obviously a very, very low number. And like you said, you do only need the 22. But feels like every week there's somebody who, even Bond dropping a 60, or you say a Tom Green injury, a laid out, you can't rely on you're having 23 scorers every week. So, and the cover, in theory, that sounds great. And a couple of people have mentioned I quite like Alex Taru this week as a bench option if you can afford him, because I think he'll keep playing. I think he'll score okay. He's got a bit of DPP flexibility. You can move him around to cover those holes. But last week I almost brought in Sam Butler thinking, well, this is a guy who can provide cover for me for the rest of the year in the forward line. And then he goes and drops a 30. So it's very hard to predict, how strong, cover might look good now, but, who knows when the Essendon teams come out, they get a bunch of players back and Johnson goes out and Angus Clark goes out and all of a sudden, we have nobody on the bench anymore.
Yeah, it depends on what the cover is, I think.
Well, I thought Matt Carroll was a safe.
Yeah, like if Matt Carroll's the type of cover you're talking about, then probably not. But if if you've got if you can loop Mills and McKercher every week and then you've got Shea Bolton on your mid/forward bench and Tom McCarthy's, lying around somewhere as well. If you've got three guys on your bench will play the rest of the season, maybe, sure, but also, would you rather hold a trade for if, Andrew Brayshaw goes down and then he can trade into another premium instead of only having one trade and then you're covering Andrew Brayshaw with Shea Bolton for the rest of the year? I think you're better off having the points on field, and that means, I think, holding the trades depending what the cover is.
Yeah. And that injury, last year we copped a whole heap of them. That was pretty unusual. Normally, between now and the end of the year, you could expect to lose one or two premos that you might have to trade out, but fingers crossed that might be it, and you might not, you might use trades to get that stronger bench, and then you don't even really need it. So
yeah, exactly.
It just has me thinking about my own dilemmas. So.
Well, how many are you down to?
I've got 3 at the moment, but just due to that situation with Tom McCarthy trapped in my midfield bench, it's either play a rookie and loop him with someone else, play a rookie in my flex, or I could do an extra trade, a rookie trade, to allow him to then get into my flex. But then I'll only have 2 trades left. So I'm not quite sure if it's worth it. Just taking on-air advice from you guys on that question. So.
Yeah, I mean, if it was just for the bench, I'd probably say no, but given the extra factor that it gets McCarthy on field this week, does make it a little bit more interesting.
On field both this week and for the rest of the season well is that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that maybe, see what teams say. If you get a miracle saviour, you might be okay, but if not, then it's probably, that's the sort of trade that I think is possibly worth doing.
Yeah, well, it'll just hold my... I know we were just saying that this isn't necessarily a good thing, but it'll hold my cover in good stead for the rest of the year, so that because this would be just to cover Whitfield, so Whitfield would be on my bench, so hopefully if he's playing the week after, I still have that extra number floating around and more flexibility to be able to cover. McCarthy could pretty much cover anyone apart from, obviously, the forwards. So.
Yeah, and maybe that's where it's worth doing, depending on how it pans out for DPPs, doing an Alex Taru up forward and then swinging round. If that
that doesn't work, actually, but that's
that doesn't
okay.
work.
We can talk about this later.
It might work for some.
Taj Houghton would be the man, but I'm not recommending people to do that.
That would be...
He's quite pricey.
Jumping the gun and...
It's going rogue.
Yeah, that is a rogue.
Nigel saying he's got a question. Do you use 2 trades to get in Max Holmes or Lachie Ash and have 70k left over for emergencies? Also, is Sheezel to McKercher a wise move? Probably. Yeah, I mean, Sheezel's... last week, his role actually wasn't that different. He's been playing that mid-forward role for a few weeks now and actually been scoring okay. He just had a real stinker. So it is frustrating, but yeah, I probably wouldn't use a trade on him. As for the other one, I mean, I don't think cash is as important at this stage of the year. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit in the bank. So like you say, if a Brayshaw gets injured or a Tom Green gets injured in the first 5 minutes and then you've got to trade him, you've got a little bit of extra money to play with if his price drops. But I'd just be getting the best player you can get and try and get as many points as you can out for the next 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the question is, should I trade in Max Holmes, the answer is probably going to be yes this week.
He's more expensive than I realised, to be honest. Well over 600k now.
Yeah.
I think if you can do it in 2 trades, though, just get it done for the run home.
Yeah. God, remember when he was under 500k?
He hung around.
He hung around for so long, and I just went, I'll get him next week. week. And now it is next week, and I don't have Max Holmes, and it hurts.
Grain-fed Beef has sent in a question. Would you trade Neil and TDK to get Bont and Rao, and he would still have 5 trades left after that. So the trade count's looking fine.
I'm sorry, I just got stuck on grain-fed beef, and my brain just was like, we're just imagining cows on the SuperCoach app for the entirety of the question. What was the
Lachie
question?
Neale, trading him out, which probably would have done that last week when Brisbane was on the bye.
Yep.
Tom de Koning out. Would get Bontempelli, who is a good price, and Matt Rowell, who's playing very well.
Grain-fed beef wants to bring in grass-eating Matt Rowell. Wow, there you go. I don't think I'd do that. It depends on how many trades you've got left.
Well, he said this would take him down to 5, which is not too bad. Him or her.
Yeah, five's right.
What about TDK, Chloe? Are we worried about him or?
Well, this is the thing, is I was already a bit worried about him, but I brought him in anyway, right? So I'm not very happy with myself for that. But I would say, I'm a bit concerned from a SuperCoach perspective. I can't necessarily see him randomly returning to the heights of the start of the year, especially considering Carlton is almost statistically ruled out of the finals.
Almost.
Mathematically possible.
Mathematically possible, but I would say that roles and things might start to look a little bit different towards the end of the year, and then obviously if he does end up being on the move, then potentially his role in the team could change. I'm not quite sure, but even at the moment, just the whole... Unfortunately, I have a few Carlton players in my SuperCoach side, and the collective effort, it's been widely discussed. Potentially this week they might come out and show a little bit more fight, but a lack of effort isn't amazing for SuperCoach scoring. So, I'm concerned.
And Neale, we know Neale's been a bit below his best. I just wonder what you'd have to see Grain-Fed Beef's team, because if you're trading out 2 primos, Neale and TDK, for 2 other primos, like what does the bottom end of your team look like?
And does that mean that de Koning's in flex? Is there someone that if you could just swap de Koning out for someone else who potentially has a bit of a high ceiling at the moment?
Unless it's a Luke Jackson into the ruck, it's a forward into the...
That's true. It could be complicated.
Mid into the forwards. It's hard to know without seeing the rest of the team. And as you said, the bottom end might need fixing up more than the top end.
Yeah,
I think Neale... especially if he didn't do it last week, Neale's a hold for mine. He's capable of doing 130 from here on out if he pulls his finger out in the role, and he, gets back to what he does best.
And the tags have been unpredictable, like we saw. Thought you could absolutely guarantee Marcus Windhager would tag one of the Freo mids last week, and he just played at half forward and didn't tag anybody. So, we can try and predict, it looks like he'll cop a tag here and here and here, but no guarantee that it happens.
Yeah, I think Neale's a hold. Tom de Koning, you're not sounding super confident on him. So
I hope he lifts because, as I said, he's in my side, but I'm not feeling overly confident that he will.
Yeah,
I'm not. It would really surprise me if he just consistently pulled out 130s from now until the rest of the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't. If you're in the position of having 7 trades, I don't hate trading Tom de Koning, but if you need cash to go up to like a Bont in flex, then maybe try and scrounge it off your bench.
Yeah.
If you've got like a Henry Hustwaite or someone sitting there that you can trade down to Archer May through DPPs or whatever else, then maybe that's the go.
Yep. Yeah. Someone with 6 trades also looking to offload Matty Roberts can get McKercher, Bergman or Tom Stewart, or use 2 and go up to a top ender more like Connor Rosie, Lockie Ash, that sort of player. That would get you down to 4 trades, which I think is okay. But, what do you think? Are you better off saving one and Stewart, McKercher? They're pretty good options.
Tom Stewart for mine.
Yeah, Tom Stewart. If you don't have Rosie, I think he is a very handy player to bring in. But Tom Stewart, I think, well, obviously, unless he gets injured. But for now, I think he's a really solid option, a great price. And, if you can do it in one trade.
We talked about that Geelong run.
I think if you can do it in one trade,
should really benefit
it
him.
helps.
Yeah, and then have 5 left. I reckon that's a pretty good spot to be in. AJ has 4 trades left. He says likely doing nothing, but thinking about Cerra to one of the Gold Coast mids, Rao, Nando or Took. Yeah, with 4 trades I probably wouldn't do it, but we'll throw to you again, Chloe. Adam Cerra, that was really it was his worst game for the year, and he's been very solid apart from that. I don't think he's someone we have to get rid of. Rao has been great recently. Pat Cerra, a Nando owner, and we talked about Took, so... those guys are all good. Gold Coast is going really well. Certainly, probably finals-wise, in a bit of a more positive situation than Carlton is, but is it worth using a trade to dump Adam Cerra at this stage?
I personally don't think so. I'm happy to have him as one of my bottom rung mids. It has only been recently that he's started to struggle a little bit more. But role-wise, his role hasn't changed a whole lot. So the only thing is he could consistently stay around the 100 mark, hopefully not the 60 mark again, whereas someone like a Rao can obviously produce like a 140. So in terms of leagues as well as just trying to get the most points on field for overall rank, you could, if that happens a few weeks in a row, Cerra gets 100, Rao gets 140, then you do start to kind of have that separation. But with 4 trades, it's a really fine line. If it was 5, I would say yes, but like here's me saying that when I don't have any trades left. But yeah, if you are in that position, the trades element of it does make it a bit more difficult too.
Yeah. The way I'm thinking about it, being someone who is at 4 trades and hurting inside whenever somebody asks a question with 7, like I'm in my head keeping 1 trade that will be a luxury trade in the next 4 weeks, and then the other 3 are all like break glass in case of emergency. And I think if you're trying to plot out what you're doing with your trades for the rest of the year, if you've got 4, then I think you do get that 1 luxury trade, and maybe this is the week you pull that trigger.
Yeah.
I'm not pulling the trigger this week, even though I do want to go Sheezel to Laird or Sheezel to someone else. I'm not quite pulling the trigger yet. And then, if we get through this 4-week batch and I've been good, then as a treat, I can use 2 to, like do a downgrade and then an upgrade where, maybe it's another premo in, maybe it's upgrading an underperforming premo. So I think you've really got to ration your trades and think about long-term what you do. And I think Cerra wouldn't be someone I'd be trading out as part of that.
Yeah.
As much as a Rowell or a Tuka really fun trade-ins,
Cerra's still a handy team man.
Yeah, Cerra's like, and again in the world of flex, if Cerra's the guy that's dropping out of your score,
well, yeah,
like, you're doing fine, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 4, same as you, and I think the next couple of weeks are quite sort of a pivotal kind of time that I'm just, like you say, try and hold fast and hold your nerve for a couple more weeks, and if we can get through to having 6 rounds left with 4 trades, that suddenly feels a lot more comfortable, and that's when you might look at, moving on a Shea Bolton or someone who's underperforming, and then maybe that's when Lachie Whitfield is bottomed out, and you could try and find a way to get him in. And I think, I'd feel a lot more comfortable doing it with, the end of the season sort of a little bit more in sight, whereas now it just feels a little bit too far away. There's a lot of things that can happen between now and then.
Yeah, I can't tell if the light in the distance in this tunnel is a train or sunlight. And until I
think
figure
mine's
out,
a train.
It's making train noises, but I'm still holding out hope that it's daylight. And until I figure out which, I'm just holding firm.
Just finish with a couple more. We'll take these as comments more than questions. Ragnar says he has 5 trades left, playing for the first time, unsure how to finish, so the unknown is exciting, kind of hoping for a few injuries to throw those who have no trades into turmoil. So I don't know if we endorse that, but
I mean, there is a question element to this, which is that evil? And the answer is yes, but I get it.
And then Camo says he's simply gone 0 trades, set and forget. So I guess there is the advantage of if you have no trades, then you don't have to stress about trades anymore.
You're done. You completed it. You completed SuperCoach.
Well, do we want to know a fun fact? By the time I get to 0 trades, I will have 0 trades, 1 boost.
Well, you've still got 3. You can use your boost.
This is the week to do it.
Maybe I should go 0 trades.
Yeah.
Good idea, Camo.
So that's a wrap for Breaking Even this week. We'll be back I'll be back on Thursday night with Matt Forrest to talk about the teams when they are named. But until then, thank you, Patch.
Thank you.
Chloe, pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for watching. Good luck with your trades, and we'll talk soon.